Welcome to this exploration of the fundamental unit of life in plants, the cell. Today, we will delve into the foundational aspects of plant biology, setting the stage for the intricate processes that define plant life. Here is what we will cover today. First, the essence of the cell. We will start by understanding what cells are and why they are vital. Think of cells as the basic building blocks of all plants, from the smallest moss to the tallest redwood. We will explore their discovery and their role as the rooms where the machinery of life operates. Then, plant life and unifying principles. Despite their immense diversity, plants share a common features and processes. From their role as primary producers to their structural innovations for surviving on land, you will see how plants are both unique and unified. Then, structure and function interplay. Plants are like biological machines. Each part of a plant, roots, stems, leaves, has a job that supports the whole plant. We will discuss how plant organs and tissues are structured to maximize efficiency, whether in transporting water or capturing sunlight. Then, we will discuss the plant cell in focus, where we will be talking about, or we will start with cell walls. The rigid cell walls are unique to plants and they play a huge role in maintaining structure and enabling the growth. Then we move to organelles, where we will examine the specialized compartments within the plant cells, from the chloroplast that power photosynthesis to the vacuoles that store water and nutrients. Then we will discuss the cell to cell communication, where we will also introduce plasmodesmata, the tiny channels that allow plant cells to share nutrients and signals, creating a highly coordinated system. By the end of today's lecture, you will have a clear picture of how plants are built from the cellular level up and how their unique structures enable them to thrive in diverse environments. This chapter is foundational, so keep these concepts in mind as they will connect to everything we will discuss later in the course. So, let's get started. So, before we dive into the intricate world of plant biology, let's start with something fundamental. What is a cell? To help you visualize it, think about Lego blocks. Just as Lego blocks are the building blocks for creating amazing models, cells are the basic building blocks of all living things. Whether we are talking about plants, animals, or even tiny microorganisms, without cells there wouldn't be any life as we know it. The term cell actually has an interesting origin. It comes from the Latin word cella, which means a small room or chamber. And there's a fun little story behind this name. Back in 1665, a scientist named Robert Hooke was examining a piece of cork under the microscope. What he saw was incredible, a pattern of tiny empty compartments that reminded him of the small rooms or cells where monks lived. That is how he came up with the term cell. But here's the twist. What Hooke was looking at were dead plant cells. The cork was made of the walls of the cells, which gave it that honeycomb-like structure. He had no idea about the incredible complexity and life processes happening inside the living cells, something we have learned so much about since then. So, as we go through this lecture, keep that image in mind. Like Lego blocks, cells are simple yet powerful building units that came together to form the vast diversity of life we see around us. Now that we have talked about what a cell is, let's answer the next big question. Why are cells so important? First, let's clear one thing up. Cells aren't just tiny rooms or compartments, they are so much more than that. Inside each cell, there's a bustling, organized world filled with tools and machines that allow plants and animals to do everything they need to survive. Whether it's growing, eating, breathing, or even reproducing, cells make it all happen. Let's focus on plants for a moment. In plants, cells don't just work alone. They are team players, working together to perform all the vital functions that keep the plant alive and thriving. For example, photosynthesis is the process where plants use sunlight to make their own food. It's like having a built-in solar-powered kitchen. Specialized cells in the leaves, packed with chloroplast, capture sunlight and turn into energy. Then, transporting water. Think about how a plant gets water from its roots all the way up to the leaves. Certain cells in the plant act like tiny straws, forming a system of tubes called xylem, which carries water upward to keep the plant hydrated. Then, breathing. Plants breathe too, just in a different way from us. Their cells take in gases like carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and release oxygen into the air, a process that is vital for all life on Earth. So, as you can see, cells are the real most valuable players. They are not just building blocks, they are living, working units that make sure plants and animals can survive and thrive. As we continue, we will dive deeper into how cells achieve these incredible tasks and what makes them so efficient. Let's keep going. Alright, let's take a closer look at how plants work and why cells are so important in making it all happen. Plants are some of the most fascinating organisms on Earth. They come in all shapes and sizes, from the tiniest duckweed floating on a pond to the towering redwood trees of the forest. Even though they look very different, they have a lot in common when it comes to how they survive and thrive. Let's break it down. Plants as solar panels. First, let's talk about how plants are like nature's solar panels. They use sunlight to create energy in a process called photosynthesis. This is how plants make their food, combining sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide from the air to produce glucose, their energy source. Here's a great example. Think about a sunflower. Have you ever noticed how it turns its head to follow the sun across the sky? That's the plant trying to soak up as much sunlight as possible, maximizing its energy production. Isn't that amazing? Then, another interesting fact, plants can't move like us. Now, unlike us, plants can't just get up and move to find what they need. They can't walk over to a sunny spot or fetch water when they are thirsty. So, instead, plants grow towards the things they need, like sunlight, water, or nutrients in the soil. For instance, if you have ever kept a plant near a window, you might have noticed that it bends or leans toward the light. That's the plant actively growing in the direction of its energy source. Then, plants are strong. Another incredible feature of plants is their strength. Plants need to stand tall and strong to reach sunlight, especially in crowded environments like forests. Their structures, like stems and trunks, act like scaffolding to hold them up against gravity and other challenges like wind. A great example is bamboo. It grows incredibly tall, and even in strong winds, it stands firm. Because of its strong, flexible structure, plants are natural engineers. Then, dealing with water loss. But standing tall and being exposed to the environment comes with challenges. One of the biggest being water loss. Plants lose water all the time, much like how we lose water when we sweat. However, plants have evolved specialized tricks to minimize water loss and avoid drying out. Take cacti, for example. They have thick, waxy skins that act like a raincoat, helping them retain moisture, and their tiny leaves or spines reduce the surface area for water to evaporate. It's an ingenious survival strategy for living in dry environments. Then, as transport systems. Finally, let's talk about the transport systems inside plants. Plants have an internal network of pipelines that move water, nutrients, and food around their bodies. This system consists of two main parts, xylem, which carries water and minerals from the roots to the leaves, then phloem, which transport food made during photosynthesis to other parts of the plant. If you have ever cut open a piece of celery, you might have seen thin tube-like structures. Those are xylem, pipelines that carry water up the plant. Without these systems, plants couldn't distribute the resources they need to survive. So why it matters? So whether it's a tiny duckweed or a giant redwood, plants rely on their cells to do all this amazing work, from capturing sunlight to growing toward nutrients, standing strong, managing water loss, and transporting resources. Every function is made possible by the tiny building blocks we call cells. Plants might not move or make noise like animals, but their cells are constantly working to keep them alive and to sustain all life on Earth. Now, let's dive even deeper into how plant cells are structured to make this incredible process happen. Alright, so let me start with a quick note. You might notice the slides look a bit messy. Don't worry, that is completely intentional. The idea is for you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the lecture without stressing about taking notes. Later, you can retake a screenshot of the slides for future reference. This way, I will do the hard work for you and you can focus on learning and sipping your coffee. So, let's jump in. Let's start with the basics. All seed plants, despite their incredible diversity, follow a simple body plan. They have three main organs: leaves, stems, and roots. Leaves are the plant's energy factories. This is where photosynthesis happens, the process of converting sunlight into food. Without leaves, plants wouldn't have the energy to survive. Then we have stems. Think of stems as highways that transport water, nutrients, and sugars between the roots and the leaves, all while providing structural support. And finally, the roots, which are like the anchors of a ship. They stabilize the plant in the soil and absorb the water and minerals needed for its growth. Now, let me explain two key terms that will come up often. Nodes are the points where leaves attach to the stem, and internodes are the spaces in between those nodes. Together, the stem and the leaves form the shoot system. So, whenever you hear shoot system, think of the above ground parts of the plant working together to keep thriving. Next, let's talk about the two main types of seed plants: gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms are what we call naked seed plants. They don't have seeds enclosed in fruits. A classic example is pine trees. Along with fir, spruce, and redwoods, here's a fun fact for you. Gymnosperms are considered less advanced and have about 700 known species. On the other hand, we have angiosperms, also known as flowering plants. These plants are more advanced and have seeds that are enclosed in fruits. They first appeared about 100 million years ago and now dominate most of the landscapes you see today. Want another fun fact? There are around 250,000 species of angiosperms. Their success largely comes down to flowers, which make the reproduction more efficient. Now, let's zoom in a bit closer to the cellular level. One of the biggest differences between plants and animals is that plant cells have rigid cell walls, while animals don't. Why is this important? Well, in animals, cells can move around during development. In plants, cells are fixed in place. This means plant growth and development rely heavily on the patterns of the cell division and enlargement. Plant cells actually have two types of cell walls. The first is the primary cell wall, which is thin and flexible. You will find this in young growing cells. And the second is the secondary cell wall, which is thicker and stronger. It's formed after the cell stops growing and contains a substance called lignin. Think of lignin as a glue that makes plants strong and rigid. For example, mosses don't have lignin, so they stay small. But trees have lignified secondary walls, allowing them to grow tall and sturdy. This evolution of lignin played a huge role in enabling plants to grow vertically and conquer land. Now, on to one of my favorite topics: plant growth and the role of meristems. Meristems are special regions in plants where cells actively divide. We can think of them as factories producing new cells. There are two main types of meristems. First, we have the apical meristem. These are found at the tips of the roots and stems and are responsible for primary growth, which makes the plant grow taller and longer. Picture the tip of a growing carrot root. That is apical meristem activity. The second type is the lateral meristem. This is responsible for secondary growth, which increases the thickness of the or width of the plant, like the rings you see in a tree trunk. There are two important types of lateral meristems: the vascular cambium, which produces wood or secondary xylem and phloem, and the cork cambium, which forms a protective outer layer. Let me give you a few analogies to make this more relatable. Primary growth is like stretching a rubber band. It gets longer and longer, just like a plant growing taller. Secondary growth, on the other hand, is like putting on thicker layers of clothing during winter. A tree adds layers to its trunk every year, which is why you see rings when you cut it open. And when you think about plant cells and their rigid cell walls, imagine a plant cell as a brick in a sturdy wall, while an animal cell is more like a soft cushion that can move around. So, what are the big takeaways from this slide? First, all seed plants share the same basic body plan, whether they are gymnosperms or angiosperms. Second, the rigid cell walls and lignin in plant cells allow plant to grow tall and strong, making them giants of the natural world. And finally, plant growth happens in a specific zones called meristems, leading to either elongation or thickening, depending on whether it's apical or lateral growth. I hope you're starting to see how amazing and interconnected plants really are. They may seem simple at first glance, but they are full of complexity and brilliance. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this plant journey. And remember, you are welcome to take screenshots of the slide later for reference. Then now, let's move on to the next exciting part of today's session.